July 10th, 1943, 2:37 a.m. Gala Beach, Sicily. Major General Terry de la Mesa Allen stands in knee-deep water as German artillery shells explode around him. The 1st Infantry Division, his division, is pinned on the beach. Men are drowning in 3 feet of water, weighed down by 70 pounds of equipment. The naval bombardment was supposed to soften the defenses. It didn't. The paratroopers were supposed to secure the high ground. They missed the drop zone by 12 miles. Allen is 54 years old, and he's wading through surf toward machine gun fire like a private on his first day. Before we continue with Terry Allen's incredible story, we need your help to keep these forgotten heroes alive. If you're already hooked by what you're hearing, hit that like button right now. It tells YouTube to share this with more people who care about real history. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss another story of courage and innovation from World War II. And here's something we love. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from, your country, your city. We have viewers from Buenos Aires to Berlin, from Manila to Montreal. Are you a veteran? Did your grandfather serve? Do you have a connection to this war? We want to hear from you. Now back to Gala Beach, where Terry Allen was about to do something no general had done in modern warfare. His staff officers are screaming at him through the radio to get back to the command ship. Allen rips the headset off and throws it into the Mediterranean. Then he draws his .45 pistol and walks toward the German positions. Behind him, 2,000 men of the Big Red One see their general advancing alone. They rise from the surf and follow. This is how you earn a nickname like Terrible Terry. But the Germans, they had a different name for him. They called him Der Verrückte General, the Crazy General. And by the end of the Sicily campaign, they'd stopped trying to predict what he'd do next, because Terry Allen didn't follow the rules. He never had. Terry de la Mesa Allen was born in 1888 in Fort Douglas, Utah. His father was a cavalry officer. His grandfather fought for the Confederacy. Military service was the family business, but Terry Allen was not a good soldier. Not at first. At West Point, he accumulated demerits like other cadets accumulated commendations, fighting, drinking, leaving post without authorization. He graduated 125th out of 130 in the class of 1912. One of his instructors wrote in his file, "This man will never make an officer." Allen didn't care. He wanted to be a cavalry officer, and the cavalry didn't need academy stars. It needed men who could ride and shoot. In 1916, he went to Mexico with Pershing's expedition hunting Pancho Villa. In one engagement, Allen's horse was shot out from under him. He commandeered a mule, rode it into rifle range, and continued fighting. His commanding officer recommended him for punishment for destroying government property, the mule, which Allen had ridden to exhaustion. The punishment was never filed, because that same officer also recommended Allen for a Silver Star. This became the pattern. Terry Allen accomplished the mission. Terry Allen broke every regulation doing it. Terry Allen got decorated and reprimanded in the same week. In World War I, he went to France with the 90th Division. At Saint-Mihiel, he led a night raid on German trenches. The raid captured 42 prisoners and 3 machine guns. Allen came back with a German officer's pistol and a piece of shrapnel in his jaw that would stay there for the rest of his life. He also came back with a new philosophy. Officers lead from the front, or they don't lead at all. Between the wars, Allen bounced around cavalry posts in Texas and Kansas. He married Mary Frances Kiesler in 1920. They had one son, Terry Jr. Allen taught tactics at Fort Riley. He was good at it. His students loved him because he threw out the manual and taught them what actually worked in combat. The Army brass didn't love him. In his efficiency reports, one word appeared again and again: insubordinate. But when the war came in 1941, the Army needed men who knew how to fight. Terry Allen was given command of the 1st Infantry Division, the Big Red One. It was the oldest division in the U.S. Army, and it had a reputation. Its soldiers were tough, undisciplined, and proud. They needed a commander who understood them. They got Terry Allen. The problem started in North Africa. November 1942. The 1st Infantry Division landed at Oran, Algeria, as part of Operation Torch. Their mission: push east, link up with British forces, trap Rommel's Afrika Korps. On paper, it was straightforward. In reality, American troops were facing the Wehrmacht for the first time, and they were losing. At Kasserine Pass in February 1943, German panzers smashed through American lines and sent 2 divisions retreating in chaos. In 3 days of fighting, the U.S. II Corps suffered 500 casualties. Entire battalions broke and ran. The British looked at Kasserine and concluded the Americans couldn't fight. General Dwight Eisenhower looked at Kasserine and started firing commanders. Terry Allen looked at Kasserine and drew a different conclusion. American doctrine was wrong. The U.S. Army trained its officers to fight by the book. Set piece battles, coordinated artillery, advance on schedule, wait for orders. The Germans didn't fight that way. They moved fast, hit hard, and exploited every opening. Allen's chief of staff was a man named Theodore Roosevelt Jr., son of the former president. Roosevelt was 55 years old, had a bad heart, and walked with a cane because of wounds from World War I. He was also the only general officer Allen completely trusted. One night in March 1943, after the division had been pulled back to retrain, Roosevelt found Allen sitting alone in his tent, smoking a cigar. "We're teaching them wrong," Allen said. Roosevelt sat down. "I know. They're telling us to wait for orders, to stay in formation, to advance by the map." Allen tapped ash from his cigar. "Meanwhile, the Germans are running circles around us because they're making decisions at the squad level." "So what do? We throw out the manual." Roosevelt smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that." Between March and June 1943, Terry Allen retrained the entire 1st Infantry Division. He started by breaking every rule in the Army Field Manual. Instead of close-order drill, he ran live-fire exercises where squads practiced attacking without orders. Instead of teaching men to dig in and wait, he taught them to advance and keep advancing until someone stopped them. Instead of coordinating with division headquarters, he trained battalion commanders to make their own decisions. The doctrine was called March Fire. Keep moving, keep shooting, don't stop. It was exactly what regulations said not to do. The division staff objected. You couldn't run an army where every sergeant made his own tactical decisions. It would be chaos. Allen's response: "War is chaos. We might as well be good at it." He also made another change, one that would define his command style forever. He ordered every officer in the division to lead from the front, not observe from the front, not coordinate from the front. Lead. First man through the breach, first man up the hill. If your men were taking fire, you were taking fire. The officer corps hated this. Leading from the front was a good way to get killed. Officers were supposed to command, not fight. Allen didn't care. He promoted officers who led. He relieved officers who didn't. Within 3 months, the 1st Infantry Division had the highest officer casualty rate in the U.S. Army. It also had the highest combat effectiveness rating. At a training exercise in May, a young lieutenant named Jack Myers led his platoon in an assault on a fortified position. Myers was 23 years old, from a town called Chillicothe, Ohio. He'd been in the Army for 11 months. The exercise was supposed to be a demonstration for visiting British officers. Myers's platoon was supposed to probe the defenses, take casualties, and withdraw so the instructors could critique the attack. Myers didn't withdraw. He saw an opening on the left flank, ignored the plan, and led his platoon through it. They overran the position in 4 minutes. The British officers were impressed. The American instructors were furious. Myers had violated the exercise parameters. He'd ignored orders. He'd taken an unauthorized risk. Terry Allen gave him a field promotion to first lieutenant. That's when the rest of the division understood what kind of commander they had. But there was resistance, not just from the instructors, from 2 Corps headquarters. The new Corps commander was George S. Patton. Patton believed in discipline, spit-shined boots, proper salutes, soldiers who looked like soldiers. The 1st Infantry Division did not look like soldiers. They wore their uniforms however they wanted. They didn't salute in combat zones. They called their officers by first names. In May 1943, Patton visited Allen's headquarters and was appalled. Men were lounging around without helmets. A private was smoking a cigarette 5 feet from the general. Nobody stood at attention. Patton pulled Allen aside. "Terry, you're running a country club, not a division." Allen smiled. "My men know how to fight. Isn't that what matters? Discipline matters. You give these men an inch, they'll take a mile." "I've given them more than an inch, George. I've given them permission to think." Patton didn't like that answer, but he didn't relieve Allen, not yet. Because in a few weeks, they were invading Sicily, and Patton needed divisions that could fight. He just didn't know what Terry Allen's division would actually do. The invasion of Sicily began on July 10, 1943. The 1st Infantry Division landed at Gela, a small port town on the southern coast. The plan was simple. Land, secure the beach, push inland. Naval guns would suppress coastal defenses. Paratroopers would drop behind the lines and secure key roads. Everything went wrong. The naval bombardment hit the wrong targets. The paratroopers dropped 12 miles off course. German and Italian forces counterattacked before the Americans were fully ashore. At 2:37 a.m., the situation at Gela Beach was desperate. Men were drowning, landing craft were burning. German machine guns were firing from concrete bunkers 300 yards inland. Terry Allen was on the command ship, USS Ancon, supposed to be coordinating the landing from offshore. Instead, he climbed into a landing craft and went ashore. His aide, a captain named Philip Kaplan, tried to stop him. "Sir, you can't go to the beach. You're the division commander." Allen didn't answer. He just went. When his boat hit the beach, Allen waded into the surf. Artillery shells were exploding in the water. Men were screaming. A corporal next to him took a round through the neck and collapsed. Allen kept walking. He reached the seawall, drew his pistol, and looked back at the men pinned on the sand. Then he stood up and walked toward the German bunkers. Captain Kaplan, watching from 50 yards away, would later write, "I saw General Allen walk into enemy fire like he was walking to church. He didn't run. He didn't crouch. He walked." Behind Allen, 2,000 men saw their commander advancing alone. They stood up and followed. The first German bunker fell in 6 minutes. The second fell in 4. By dawn, the 1st Infantry Division had pushed half a mile inland. Allen never fired his pistol. He didn't need to. His men did the fighting, but they fought because their general showed them it could be done. That's when the Germans started calling him Der verrückte General, the crazy general. The battle for Sicily lasted 38 days. In that time, Terry Allen's division fought in ways that violated every tactical doctrine. At Troina, a fortified town in the mountains, Allen was ordered to wait for artillery support before attacking. He attacked anyway. His men took the town in 3 days of street-to-street fighting. At the Salso River, German forces were dug in on the far bank. Regulations said to establish a bridgehead, bring up engineers, build a crossing. Allen sent 2 companies across at night without orders. They were on the far bank before headquarters knew they'd moved. At Nicosia, a German rearguard was holding a mountain pass. Allen was supposed to pin them in place while another division flanked them. Instead, he sent a battalion straight up the mountain at 2 a.m. They attacked with bayonets and grenades. The Germans withdrew by dawn. Every engagement was the same pattern. Allen identified the objective. Allen gave his officers freedom to execute. Allen led from the front. His division took 286 casualties in Sicily. That was the highest rate in the invasion force, but they also advanced farther, captured more prisoners, and killed more Germans than any other American division. At one point, a German officer captured near Messina was asked why his unit had retreated. He said, "We were facing the division with the crazy general, the one who doesn't follow rules." Even the Germans couldn't predict what Allen would do, but back at headquarters there was a problem. George Patton was furious. In Patton's view, Terry Allen was insubordinate, reckless, and turning the 1st Infantry Division into a mob. The men didn't salute. They didn't follow regulations. They acted like they were above the rest of the army. And they did. The Big Red One believed it was the best division in the U.S. military. Terry Allen encouraged that belief. He told his men they were elite. He gave them privileges other divisions didn't get. He protected them when they got in trouble. In Patton's view, that was a threat to discipline across the entire army. In early August, after Sicily was secured, Patton called Allen to his headquarters. "Terry, your division fought well, but you've got a discipline problem." "I've got a fighting division, George. You've got a division that thinks it's special." "It is special." Patton leaned forward. "You're relieved, effective immediately." Allen stared at him. "On what grounds?" "On the grounds that I can't have a division commander who doesn't follow orders. My division took every objective you gave us. You took them your way, not the army way." Allen stood up. "The army way gets men killed for no reason. Get out, Terry." The relief of Terry Allen sent shockwaves through the 1st Infantry Division. Men threatened to mutiny. Officers requested transfers. Theodore Roosevelt Jr. submitted his resignation in protest. Patton denied it. Allen was reassigned to a training command in the United States. For 6 months, he taught tactics to new officers at Fort Sam Houston in Texas. He didn't complain. He didn't give interviews. He just taught. But the War Department was watching, and they were looking at the numbers. In North Africa and Sicily, the 1st Infantry Division under Allen had the highest casualty rate in the U.S. Army, but they also had the highest kill ratio. For every American killed, Allen's division killed 7 Germans. No other division came close. In late 1943, General Omar Bradley, now commanding the First Army in preparation for D-Day, requested Terry Allen for a new assignment. The 104th Infantry Division, a brand new unit training in Oregon, needed a commander. Bradley's memo to Marshall was 3 sentences. "Allen's methods are unorthodox. His men love him. He wins." Item: Terry Allen took command of the 104th in February 1944. The 104th Infantry Division was nicknamed the Timber Wolves. They were fresh recruits, mostly from the Pacific Northwest. None of them had seen combat. Allen trained them exactly the way he'd trained the 1st Division. Aggressive tactics, decentralized command, march fire. In September 1944, the 104th landed in France and entered combat. Their first major engagement was at Aachen, Germany, the first German city the Allies reached. Aachen was supposed to be bypassed. Command wanted to surround it, cut it off, starve it out. Allen disagreed. He believed Aachen was a symbol. Taking it would break German morale. He attacked. The battle lasted 3 weeks. House to house, room to room. The 104th lost 498 men, but they took Aachen. German prisoners later said they'd never seen Americans fight that way. Aggressive, relentless, no pauses. It was Terry Allen's style of war. Over the next 7 months, the 104th Infantry Division advanced 100 miles across Germany. They liberated over 200 towns. They captured 55,000 prisoners. They never failed to take an objective. And Terry Allen led from the front every single day. At Halle, Germany, in April 1945, Allen's jeep took machine gun fire. His driver was killed. Allen grabbed the wheel, drove into cover, and then led a squad to eliminate the German position. He was 56 years old. At the Elbe River, Allen met Soviet forces for the first time. The war in Europe was essentially over. A Russian general asked to meet the American commander. When the general saw Allen, covered in dust, wearing a standard uniform with no insignia except his stars, he didn't believe Allen was a general. Russian generals traveled with entourages and wore medals. Allen just smiled. "Tell him I'm the guy who got here first." But there was one battle that defined everything Terry Allen believed about leadership. One engagement that showed exactly why his men would follow him anywhere and why the Germans feared him. It happened in November 1944 in the Hurtgen Forest. The Hurtgen was 50 square miles of dense woodland on the German-Belgian border. Ancient fir trees so thick that sunlight barely reached the forest floor. The Germans had spent months fortifying it. Bunkers, minefields, artillery pre-sighted on every trail. Between September and December 1944, 6 American divisions entered the Hurtgen. They took 33,000 casualties. Some battalions lost 80% of their men. Commanders called it the Death Factory. The problem was doctrine. Standard U.S. tactics didn't work in dense forest. You couldn't see more than 30 yards. Artillery shells hit treetops and exploded overhead, sending shrapnel straight down. Radio communications were impossible through the trees. Companies lost contact with each other within minutes. The Army's solution: send more men. Attack on a broader front. Overwhelm the defenses with numbers. It wasn't working. On November 16th, the 104th Infantry Division received orders to enter the forest and clear a sector near the village of Eschweiler. Intelligence estimated German strength at 2 battalions, maybe 200 men. Terry Allen read the orders and knew they were wrong. He called his regimental commanders together that night. Colonel John Roosevelt, Theodore Roosevelt's son, who'd transferred to the 104th specifically to serve under Allen, was there. So was Colonel Frank Murdoch, commander of the 415th Infantry, and Colonel Gilbert Check of the 414th. Allen spread a map on the hood of his Jeep. "Headquarters wants us to advance in line formation, 3 regiments abreast, standard doctrine." Murdoch nodded. "That's what every other division has tried. And every other division got slaughtered." Allen tapped the map. "We're not doing it their way." Roosevelt leaned in. "What are you thinking, Terry?" "I'm thinking we do what the Germans don't expect. We go in at night, small units, no radios. They're useless anyway. Each company operates independently. Find the bunkers, go around them, keep moving." Check frowned. "Sir, if we split up, we won't be able to support each other. We won't need to, because we won't be where the Germans expect us." Allen looked at his commanders. "Every division that entered this forest attacked during the day on a broad front, straight into prepared positions. The Germans know exactly what we're going to do because we keep doing the same thing." "So we do the opposite," Roosevelt said. "We do the opposite." Murdoch shook his head. "Corps is going to lose their minds when they find out." Allen smiled. "Only if we tell them." At 11 p.m. on November 16th, the 104th Infantry Division entered the Hurtgen Forest. No artillery preparation, no flares, no radios transmitting. Each company moved independently, following compass bearings. Squads stayed close enough to whisper but far enough apart that one mine wouldn't kill a whole platoon. Private First Class Robert Chen was 22 years old, from Sacramento, California. He joined the Army in 1943 with his best friend, a kid named Danny Morrison from the same neighborhood. They'd gone through basic training together, shipped overseas together, fought through France together. Chen was a rifleman in C Company, 1st Battalion, 415th Infantry. Morrison was his squad leader. That night, moving through the Hurtgen, Chen could barely see Morrison 10 feet ahead. The forest was absolutely black. Trees so close together you had to turn sideways to pass between them. Morrison held up a fist. The squad stopped. Chen heard it then. Voices, German, maybe 50 yards ahead. Morrison turned and made hand signals. Chen and 3 others moved left. The rest of the squad went right. They found the bunker 5 minutes later. Concrete. Firing slit facing the trail. 2 Germans inside, smoking cigarettes, completely unaware that American soldiers were 30 feet away. Morrison looked at Chen and pointed. Chen nodded. They threw grenades simultaneously through the firing slit. 2 explosions. Silence. The squad moved past the bunker and kept going. They didn't stop. They didn't report their position. They just moved. This was Terry Allen's innovation. Don't get bogged down fighting bunkers. Go around them. Let follow-up units deal with strong points. The lead elements just keep advancing. Between midnight and 3 a.m., the 104th Infantry Division penetrated 2 miles into the Hürtgen forest. German units, expecting a daylight assault on their main positions, never saw them coming. By dawn, American soldiers were behind German lines, cutting communication cables, ambushing supply convoys, spreading chaos. The Germans tried to respond, but they couldn't figure out where the Americans were. Radio intercepts picked up nothing. The 104th wasn't using radios. Observation posts saw nothing. The Americans were moving through sectors the Germans considered impassable. At 6 a.m., German headquarters in Eschweiler received reports of American soldiers in 6 different locations simultaneously, none of them on the expected axis of advance. They panicked. By noon, German forces were withdrawing from the Hürtgen forest, not because they'd been defeated in battle, because they didn't know where the enemy was, and they were terrified of being surrounded. The 104th Division's casualties in the Hürtgen, 127 men. Every other division that fought there lost thousands, but Chen's squad wasn't celebrating, because just after dawn, they ran into trouble. They'd advanced almost 3 miles into the forest when they hit a minefield. The lead scout stepped on a shoe mine, a small anti-personnel mine the Germans buried everywhere. The explosion took his foot off at the ankle. The squad hit the ground. Mines were everywhere. Step off the trail, you died. But staying on the trail meant German machine guns would find you. Morrison made a decision. He stood up and started walking forward, testing each step, looking for disturbed ground. Chen whispered, "Danny, get down." Morrison ignored him. He walked 10 yards, 20, 30. Then he stepped on a mine. The explosion threw Morrison backward. Chen crawled forward, ignoring the danger, and dragged him off the trail. Morrison's left leg was gone below the knee. His right leg was shredded. He was conscious, staring at the sky. "Rob," Morrison said. His voice was calm, too calm. "Rob, listen. Shut up, Danny. Medic's coming." "No medic's coming. We're 3 miles in." Morrison grabbed Chen's jacket. "You tell my mom I wasn't scared. You tell her that. You're gonna tell her yourself." "Rob." Morrison's grip weakened. "That garage we were going to open. Morrison and Chen's auto repair. You do it anyway, okay?" Chen couldn't speak. He just nodded. Morrison died 2 minutes later. When the 104th Division pulled out of the Hürtgen forest 3 days later, they'd accomplished what 6 other divisions couldn't. They'd cleared their entire sector. They'd taken 347 German prisoners. They'd lost 189 men. By Hürtgen standards, that was a miracle, but Terry Allen didn't see it as a miracle. He saw it as proof that his methods worked. Fight smart, not hard. Use the terrain. Move at night. Give your men freedom to make decisions. When Corps headquarters demanded to know why the 104th had attacked without proper coordination, Allen's response was simple. "I coordinated with the enemy's weaknesses, not your radio schedule." They couldn't court-martial him, not when his division had succeeded where everyone else failed, but they could resent him, and they did. After the Hürtgen, Allen did something no other division commander did. He attended the funeral of every man killed under his command, 189 funerals. His staff begged him to stop. He was exhausted. He'd barely slept in 6 months. The division was moving forward, and he needed to focus on the next battle. Allen refused. These men followed me into the forest. The least I can do is see them out." At Danny Morrison's funeral, held at a temporary cemetery near Aachen, Chen was the only member of the squad present. The rest was still in combat. Alan attended. He stood at the back, didn't say anything, just watched as the chaplain said prayers over a wooden cross. After the ceremony, Alan approached Chen. "You were in Morrison's squad?" "Yes, sir." "Tell me about him." Chen hesitated. Then he said, "He was going to open a garage with me." After the war, Morrison and Chen's auto repair. He had the whole thing planned out. Alan nodded. "What happened to him?" "Stepped on a mine, clearing a path for the rest of us. He saved the squad." "Yes, sir." Alan put a hand on Chen's shoulder. "Then he did his job. That's all any soldier can do." He paused. "You still planning to open that garage?" "I don't know, sir." "You should. Best way to honor him." Alan walked away. Chen watched him go. This general who'd just fought a 3-day battle and still found time to attend a private's funeral. That's when Chen understood why men followed Terry Allen into machine gun fire. In December 1944, the 104th Division was pulled out of the line for rest and refitting. They'd been in combat continuously since September. The men were exhausted. Alan used the break to do something unusual. He held a division-wide meeting, not a formation, not a briefing, a meeting. He stood on the back of a truck and spoke to 3,000 men. "I know you're tired," Alan said. "I know some of you have been asking when we go home. I can't answer that. What I can tell you is this: we're winning. And we're winning because you've learned to fight smarter than the enemy." He paused. The men were silent. "Every regulation says commanders should stay at headquarters, coordinate from the rear, use radios and maps, and let the captains do the fighting." Alan smiled. "I don't do that. You know why? Because I trust you. I trust you to see what needs to be done and do it. I trust you to take care of each other. I trust you to win." Someone in the crowd shouted, "We trust you too, sir." The entire division erupted in cheers. Alan waited for silence. Then he said, "One more thing. When we go back into combat, some of you won't come home, I know that, you know that. But I promise you this, I will never waste your lives. Every attack we make will have a purpose. Every risk we take will be worth it. And if I'm asking you to walk into fire, I'll be walking with you." He climbed down from the truck. The division stood at attention, not because they were ordered to, but because they wanted to. In January 1945, the 104th entered Germany. They fought through the Rhineland. They crossed the Rhine River at Cologne. They drove east toward the Elbe. Every battle followed the same pattern. Alan identified the objective. Alan gave his commanders freedom. Alan led from the front. At Cologne, Alan personally scouted German positions by walking through rubble-filled streets at 3 a.m. His aide protested. Alan ignored him. At the Rhine crossing, Alan was in the first boat. Not because he needed to be, because his men needed to see him there. At Halle, when his driver was killed, Alan could have pulled back and let someone else handle it. He didn't. This was Terry Allen's philosophy. Leadership isn't rank. It's example. By April 1945, the war was nearly over. German resistance was collapsing. The 104th Division had advanced over 1,000 miles from the beaches of France to the heart of Germany. They'd never failed to take an objective. Not once. Alan had led them for every single mile. At the Elbe River, when the Russian general questioned whether Alan was really a general, it wasn't an insult. It was confusion, because Terry Allen didn't look like a general. He looked like a soldier, and that's exactly what he was. When the war ended in May 1945, Terry Allen returned to the United States. The Army offered him a staff position at the Pentagon. He declined. He retired in 1946 with the rank of Major General. He moved to El Paso, Texas, and took a job as the president of a small insurance company. He didn't give speeches. He didn't write memoirs. He lived quietly with his wife and son. In 1969, a military historian named Carlo d'Este was researching a book on the Sicily campaign. He tracked down Allen, now 80 years old, living in a modest house in El Paso. d'Este asked Allen why he'd led from the front when every regulation said commanders should stay at headquarters. Allen's answer, because if you're asking men to die, the least you can do is show them you're willing to die too. d'Este asked why he'd violated orders so often. Allen said, I didn't violate orders, I accomplished the mission. There's a difference. d'Este asked if he regretted being relieved in Sicily. Allen thought about it. Then he said, no, because I did it right. Terry Allen died on September 12, 1969, at the age of 80. His obituary in the New York Times was 4 paragraphs long. It mentioned his service in World War II, but said nothing about Gala Beach or the 104th Division's record. He was buried at Fort Bliss National Cemetery in El Paso. About 200 people attended the funeral. Most of them were veterans from the 1st and 104th Infantry Divisions. One of them, a man named James Muldoon, who'd served under Allen at Gela, left a note at the gravestone. It said, "You taught us we could do anything. Thank you." Today, there's a small museum at Fort Bliss dedicated to Terry Allen. It's in a building most people walk past. Inside, there's a uniform, some medals, and a photo of Allen standing on Gila Beach with his pistol drawn. The plaque says, Major General Terry de la Mesa Allen, Terrible Terry, a soldier's general. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Stories like Terry Allen's are exactly why we make these videos, to remember the men who didn't care about glory, only about getting the job done. Subscribe to this channel so you don't miss the next forgotten story of courage and innovation from World War II. And drop a comment below. Tell us, do you know a veteran who led like Terry Allen? Someone who broke the rules to save lives? We want to hear about them. Thanks for keeping these heroes alive.